All right, hi everyone. I'm Leslie, and I'm going to teach you all a little bit about British poetry, specifically William Wordsworth's poem, I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. Our plan today is that I will explore William Wordsworth's poem with you, and we're going to try to gain a better understanding of how the poem relates to Wordsworth's own poetic theory. And by demonstrating how it relates to his poetic theory, I hope that you all can gain a perspective of how theoretical knowledge can enrich, inform, and even provide greater entertainment in poetic reading. So first I want to introduce the poem to you briefly. The poem is actually biographically based. It's based off of a walk that William Wordsworth took with his sister Dorothy 2 years prior to the publication. So in April of 1802, he took a walk with his sister Dorothy, and we can actually read about that walk from her perspective in her journals called the Grassmere Journals. They're called the Grassmere Journals because the poem was composed somewhere around the vicinity of the town in the Lake District called Grassmere, which is where he and his sister Dorothy and eventually his wife and children also lived together. So I wanted to kind of give you all just a little bit of background, although we aren't going to have time today to look at how Dorothy kind of informs Wordsworth's poem, because he revisits her journals. They had a very open relationship as siblings, and she let him read her journals over and over again for him to compose his own poetry. Before he composed I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, he made a book of poetry with his good friend Samuel Taylor Coleridge called Lyrical Ballads. And in the preface to Lyrical Ballads in 1800, he says, as you can see on your handouts, that all good poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feeling. It takes its origin from emotion recollected in tranquility. So this is the little snippet of poetic theory that we're going to work with today. One thing I want to say about this specific snippet of poetic theory is that many people have taken the first part of the statement before the colon and really run with it. So the first part of the statement has been given a lot of critical weight. Many people read Wordsworth as a poet of nature and of emotion, and kind of think of Wordsworth the way that maybe teenagers think of poetry, as just writing poetry in this very emotional state and kind of stream of consciousness, free-form writing. But first off, I want to pose that that's not what he did at all. So I want us to explore the second half of that statement further and really focus on the second half of that statement, since there's plenty of criticism around the first half. So the question that we need to be asking ourselves today is, what happens if we try to locate how a poem performs the act of poetic creation itself? So I need 4 volunteers to read the poem out loud with me. I think that poetry should be read aloud. That's what it's intended for, and certainly in the Romantic era, that's how they treated it. They didn't have television, they had poetry, and Wordsworth particularly had a cuckoo clock that he liked to invite people over to watch. But anyway, so do I have 4 volunteers? 4 people? Great. Would you read stanza 1, and that's that first group of lines? Do I have a second volunteer? Great. And a third? Thank you. And a fourth? Fantastic. Thank you. So if you'll just each read a stanza in that order. All right.
I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er valleys and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze.
Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance.
The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought.
For oft, when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, They flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances within the daffodils.
Thank you. That was a lovely reading. I appreciate it. So what I'd like for us all to do is to break off into our groups. And as groups, you'll see on the back of your handout, I've provided an activity, and I've even notated how long I expect for you all to spend on this activity, 1 minute each. So what I'd like for you to do is find and underline one quote that illustrates or performs, and how is the key word here, how poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feeling. And then the second part is to find and underline one quote that shows how poetry takes its origin from emotion recollected in tranquility. All right.
10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in spite of me.
You can make your choice. Interpreter's choice.
Isn't that spontaneous? Me neither. Trust me.
I need to Dr. Davis is telling me.
No, that's not.
How's it going over here?
I lied. This is like off when on my couch I lied. Vacant or specific. Isn't this the spontaneous one?
What do you all think? Is it spontaneous when you're lying on your couch in a pensive mood? Or in a thoughtful mood? Well, try and put yourself in the narrative of the poem, right? So we have the narrative that starts.
Like when you're using a present tense, that means you're doing it right now.
But
If
poetry,
it's a past,
yes.
if it's a past tense, that means it's already gone.
Right, so he's presently on his couch, and the past is the daffodils, right? So that gives us some clues as to what's the moment of reflection and what's the moment of emotion, right? Maybe. All right, so I want to wrap up real quick. We only have about a minute left, so hopefully you all found two. And first I'd like to know, is there a group that found two they would like to share, please? Found two quotes that demonstrate, or how about a group that found the first demonstration of a spontaneous overflow of powerful feeling? Who found a quote that shows us that? What'd you all find?
Honestly, I like the first one as the emotional one. I wonder lonely as a cloud. Who's that, man?
Right, so this is showing us feeling, right? Wandering lonely as a cloud. And this is showing us that moment in the poetic creation. What about taking its origins from emotion recollected in tranquility? So where do we see a recollection of this spontaneous emotion of coming upon these daffodils? Yeah, so the whole fourth stanza represents that recollection. He's on his couch thinking about what happened with the daffodils, and what's it bring to him? Pleasure and bliss, right? So that's what Wordsworth is telling us poetry should do for us. Thank you. And that's the end.